The frame for marketing is, what's the job of a marketer? To deliver profitable customers. That's the North Star.
Welcome to Playbook Broken.
Today on Playbook Broken, we're talking to someone who doesn't just look at data, he weaponizes it for business transformation. Ed C. is the Chief Growth Officer newly at Zeta Global, where he's reshaping how enterprise brands use AI, identity data, and real-time insights to drive performance. He's also ex-IBM, ex-McKinsey, deep roots in analytics, personalization, and the kinds of strategies CMOs pretend to understand, but actually it builds them. As AI eats marketing operations, media budgets implode, and the same three acronyms dominate every boardroom, Ed's the guy with a different take. He's not here to pitch software. He's here to tear apart the old data-driven gospel and show us what actually works. Ed, welcome to Playbook Broken.
Thank you, Mark. Excited to be here, and thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is great. I'm super excited to chat. So as I was prepping, this just caught my eye. So you guys just announced, so first of all, congratulations on the new gig. I know that's a big transformation for you as well, taking the opportunity at Zeta, which we could talk about as well. But this just caught my eye. So Zeta just announced something you guys are calling Zeta Answers, AI that just doesn't give you insights, it makes decisions for you. So let's get the playbook conversation started. I mean, there's so much there to unpack, but talk about the playbook shift of what a product like Zeta Answers represents.
So think about it this way. Playbooks have been incredible enablers for all of us through the years. It helped us get our jobs done, decide what the jobs to be done were, and then be able to take all of that to market. They also constrained us quite a bit because they were looking backwards. They were built on history. Zeta Answers and other things like that, power of the AI now, right now really allows us to start saying, how do we move beyond a playbook? And how can we actually have something that becomes your partner in thinking, provide you with answers, provide you with prompts, provide you with provocation to really be able to go above and beyond? Mark, one of the big things that I love about playbooks is they really allowed us to take and scale an organization. They also constrained us, as I mentioned before. One of the things here, I think, and it is really, when you think about it, there's really two things in a good playbook. There's a frame, and then there's the actual steps to execute. I think frames can sometimes be more timeless, more resilient than the playbook itself.
I mean, frame and execute is a really interesting way. And one of the wonderful things about doing this new show is talking to people like you and getting different perspectives on what playbook means, because that word is easy, right? I think most of us think of it like a set of steps, basically a framework. But when you were talking there, what a flash to in my head was this idea of first principles, which I'm sure in your McKinsey days, like that's it, right? So connect those dots for me, because there's a playbook which is executional in nature, but then there's first principles that guide kind of thinking and strategy.
And Mark, you hit it spot on. One of the things that when you zoom out from the core aspect, playbook is a big word. You start saying, all right, do I have a frame there? And if we talk about marketing, I'll give you my perspective on what's the frame for marketing, if you'll indulge me for a moment. And the frame for marketing is, what's the job of a marketer? To deliver profitable customers. That's the North Star. But how do they do that? They have to be able to do two things. They have to be able to set preference, buy my can of soup over somebody else's, buy my piece of software over somebody else's, buy my auto over somebody else's. They have to set that preference. And they have to set that preference strongly enough to achieve the premium that they want. So if you think about that, profitable customers, set preference, manage premium. It all seems pretty simple. When you get below that, there's three things that you need to be able to do. Can I recognize a pocket of opportunity? Can I reach that pocket of opportunity? And can I deliver something relevant? Those are the three R's of marketing. And to me, that outlasts any playbook. Going back to David Ogilvy, that's what it was then. I wasn't even around then, despite the looks. But that's what it was then. That's what it is now. But at that level of 3 R's, that's where the playbooks begin to change. The playbooks 5 years ago, pre-AI, are not the same. Recognizing a pocket of opportunity then was a much more onerous process. Being able to manage the reach to those far harder to build an audience, far harder to measure an audience, delivering relevance, which let's face it, it's a lot of the touch points and the creative was way, way different. Playbook for those bars now has changed and it's much faster. It's no longer just a conversation delayed in time. It's a conversation in the moment. So those playbooks have changed, but the frame remains the same.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And we've been through so many journeys, the relevance or irrelevance of the CIO, the swing shift between tech and marketing, CIO stuff, the rise of chief customer officers. You have a title, you're chief growth officer, right? I think, but at the end of the day, those principles don't change. How we organize our teams and our organizations and our cultures around that obviously can and must change, especially in an AI mitigated, powered, algorithmic world.
Well, I think you're on a great point there. And I think we sometimes confuse the job to be done and the how we do the job. And I think that that's the separation between the frame and the playbook.
Yeah, that's really interesting because the moment you crack open it seems to me, I could be wrong, but the moment you crack open a playbook that isn't sort of adjusted for what's happening today, it's sort of like it becomes almost a living document. And I know, like, I can speak from our organization standpoint. One of the challenges we have is that it's comforting to go, oh, here's the playbook. We'll just run it again. And it's like, well, if it's not working as well, why isn't it working as well? And I'm sure you and I can have a long conversation about marketing attribution, which is a whole other thing about how you're measuring this stuff. Are we finally getting to a point where kind of marketer as an operator starts to fade and the role becomes something else entirely because of these technologies like AI?
Well, marketing as an operator, marketing as a business leader needs to stay in place, delivering the profitable customers. They will still be operating, but will they be operating with a high degree of automation supporting that and allowing them to deliver more profitable customers or customers that are more profitable? Both things are good. But I think that that's where we're at. And I think the marketer as operator will still be in play. They'll just have a different supply chain, a different set of tools, a different supply chain to manage.
If you look at it that way, and I know you do, and you are, what pops out at the end of the supply chain is a profitable customer. All of those pieces are the mechanics of the playbook, starting with those first principles all the way through, whether it's email or social media, whatever the channel might be. It's interesting. I was in a conversation yesterday and was talking about this idea of measuring channels versus measuring overall marketing effectiveness. And, we all have seen the slides, right? I'm sure you've done the thing too, where it's like the buyer journey isn't linear. It's not a funnel. It's this. What's the value of an individual channel? I don't know. I'm not sure how you measure that anymore, but collectively, when you look at brand perception and then moving people into becoming profitable customers, I think that's where, especially on the SEO and the discoverability side, things have really changed over the last probably 5 years, 6 years.
And right now with AI and the way search and discovery is going through AI, it's changing day by day, minute by minute. But I think one of the big things here is if you use a metaphor here and say, I make cookies, I want to be able to measure the number of cookies. I want to measure the ingredients that are going in. I'm going to want to measure the different pieces and efficiency of the machine. There's many, many different measurements there, but at the end of the day, it's how many good cookies are you producing and the quality of those cookies. Same thing with customers. I think we get a little confused there. We want one measure while we have to run the complex machine. There's interim measures that you will need to be able to do to manage things within the funnel or the dynamic, whatever it is on the journey, while you're still doing that final aspect of measurement. You know how much you spent overall, and you want an idea of the attribution so you can optimize it, but that's looking short-term versus long-term. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. The follow-up to that I definitely want to know your answer to is, how do you think boards and C-suite understand that shift in this environment? Because you get asked hard questions. Okay, if we do that, what do we get? I want to deploy this money to get that many cookies. Okay, great. But because the journey is so different and mitigated by algorithms and the rest of it, do you think boards and C-suites are keeping up with what's really happening in marketing? Or do you think there's a gap there because of the acceleration of the change?
There's a huge gap. And I'll say a study that I was involved with in McKinsey a year ago before I left, which was addressed to the CEO, basically saying The answer to growth is in your marketing organization, but you may not know exactly what marketing can do. No, the CEOs do not necessarily know what's going on. Boards, perhaps even less so. And when we look at who the CEO is today, fewer and fewer CEOs have done a stint in marketing. It used to be in consumer goods and other places, many CEOs were marketers. That's not the case now. And there's been a distance over the last 10 years introduced where this CMO is more and more distant from the CEO. Not going to go into the reasons why, or we can talk about that separately.
Yeah.
But it is imperative that the CMO have the conversation with the CEO to make sure the CEO understands what can be done. Some organizations, the CMO brings their CEO out to Silicon Valley or other places to gain that aspect of excitement about it and really saying, wow, can I really, really do that? There's always a third party that needs to be involved, though, and that's the CFO. If you want to have a meaningful conversation with the CEO, there's always that third person who's going to sit there beside the CEO. I believe his numbers, I believe her numbers, and that's the CFO. And that's a relationship that has not historically been a strong one and must be that. When I look at some of the best CMOs out there, they've really built that relationship. They become work buddies with the CFO and really make sure the CFO understands the mechanics of marketing, but the mechanics of the productivity of the profitable customer, not just brand health metrics, not agency metrics, and certainly not clip metrics.
I'm compelled to ask a question about brand, because you mentioned it a bunch of times. And what we're seeing, the discourse in media and in the marketing universe today is brand is back, baby, right? I'm not sure where it ever went, but like there's a lot of discussion, especially in SEO, PPC, and kind of performance marketing channels, that this LLM thing, AIO, LLMs, whatever, is forcing a rethink of SEO as a performance channel. And I have this hypothesis, so I'll just run it by you. I think, and certainly this is not true at the big CPG, but in the average, let's say B2B software company or average manufacturing company, the shine came off brand for I think a long time, because I think we're all been fooled and enamored by performance channels, money in, cookies out. Do you agree, or do you think am I overstating it? Because I just, everywhere I look, everyone's talking brand, but I'm a little bit afraid the brand measurement skills have atrophied a little bit.
They have, but let's go back to that frame that I discussed. Set preference, manage premium. Setting preference to manage premium is the strength of your brand. Very classic definition, very classic framing. Why was performance marketing so successful for so long? Because we had built up so much brand strength. There was a lot of fish to go fish out. Maybe we've overfished a little bit, and now we have to go restock the pond. We have to go back to the brand side and balance the two there. It's an ecosystem that we as marketers need to be able to manage, which means we have to be able to measure. So we have to have it in here to say, what's the impact of my brand in generating the fish that I can go catch, and then manage the capture of those items within the total ecosystem.
The current crop of executive marketers today, they've all been weaned or built on performance marketing. And everywhere I look, it's just this really interesting conversation. I remember when I was first out of college, it was like, what is brand and how do you define brand? Everybody defines brand differently, or the worst, which is I know when I see it, but ultimately that promise that you have with a customer and the trust that you built ultimately is the brand. But measuring that can be really tricky, especially when there's immense downward pressure on where are the leads, give me good leads, turn marketing into money. There's just all these factors, whether it's cost of acquisition going up, sales cycles increasing, especially in B2B, like all of those things that I know you guys spend time thinking about. So do we, because I think it's really critical to understand what's happening.
Absolutely. You wanted to bring this back to the playbooks being broken. So when I look at here, that aspect of saying the playbook for brand, the playbook for performance, it's a customer journey or a funnel. We often disconnected all of those different pieces and we measured them independently, as opposed to saying, let's look at how these things interact with each other and look for what's the right level of precision to make the next best decision, as opposed to just the right decision to account for every penny. And I think if you're running a process and running a machine, You got to be looking forward, just not accounting backwards. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. And I think you can almost see through what you just said in terms of where cracks can come in an organization because of incentive alignment or differences in opinion or just flat out mismatched technology solutions create those mismatches. On Playbook Broken, guests get to pick from a variety of segments, from breakdowns to workshops, new roles. And you pick breakdown, which is my favorite. And it's the one most people are going to pick because that's what's happening in the world today. So let's keep that discussion going. Can you talk a little bit about traditional enterprise marketing playbook, big spend, fragmented data, dashboards, not much clarity? I mean, my starting question is, did any of this ever work, or was it always a bit of a fiction or not?
It looked simpler. It looked far, far simpler. And part of it was going back to those 3 Rs, recognizing a pocket of opportunity. Well, your pockets were kind of aggregated because there was no way for you to be precise. Being able to reach, you were going to be working on 3 major channel groupings, and that was it. And relevance was going to be far, far simpler because we're shooting a 15, a 30, whatever it may have been. And it was simpler. It had huge amounts of waste in it. When I first went into the business, people were like, you're going into something that's super sexy. I was like, no, look at this. This doesn't get super sexy. I'm going into the waste management business. 30 years later, I'm still in the waste management business because it's not only who you're talking to, it's who you're not talking to. However, we have a new set of tools today, and this is where the playbook is broken. It's not just personalization. It's not just creating audience. It's creating precision at scale, the power of the individual, the power of the insight around that individual, and the power of AI to be able to aggregate the individuals into truly propense or opportunistic audiences. And then the ability, when you know about them, to be able to deliver relevance and be that price, package, promotion, content, whatever it may be, we can now do at scale in a way we've never been able to do before. And that's what's really exciting about the new playbook. With AI, the new playbook is writing itself and it's learning from itself, which we've never been able to do before.
Orient me a little bit, because both of us are old enough to remember there was a movement, I guess it was mid 90s. I don't know, Don and Martha Person Rogers, I think it was.
Person Rogers,
Right?
yes.
Right. I think I still have I still have his original books back here somewhere, but like the one-to-one experience. And then there was a one-to-one enterprise, and we all ran around buying technology, buying stacks, building all this stuff. I'm sure some companies figured some of it out, but it never really worked at scale, to your exact point. I think what you're saying, and I think what I'm observing as well, is AI is that missing piece. It's not just machine learning, it's all the rest of it too. That's the missing piece. So the one-to-one marketer is here. Is that what we're saying?
The ability to aggregate many ones and hit all those ones at scale is finally here. And I'm being very careful there. And I think I just butchered the English language. So my apologies.
Well done.
But I think that it's really the financial equation has changed. If I was selling bags of potato chips before, I couldn't sell just to Mark. I had to aggregate and build that waste in. Spill was acceptable. The channels were priced that way, and it just made sense. As the channels fragmented, I only have so many dollars, so many places to go. My reach was evaporating. I had to be able to have a different level of scale. AI is allowing us to do that, to find those individuals, to programmatically aggregate them and address them across multiple channels by having it be much more automated and much more self-aware.
I think that's right. And I think that's clearly where we're headed. Do you have a perspective on the difference between pre-generative AI and now modern generative AI? Is the difference that is the automation and the autonomous nature of, let's say, an agent versus just a machine learning algorithm? Or is it something else that I'm not thinking of?
I think it's a confluence, Mark, of multiple things here. Let's face it, once we had programmatic buying and other things, stuff got harder and easier, and many different pieces came here. This is another layer that allows us to manage all those technology capabilities faster, better, and self-learning. I've heard the term autonomous. We all have opinions about that, but I think agent is the important word here. And I'm going to say that new marketers playbook, or the playbook for the new marketer, is going to be able to look at their current organization, look at all the aspects of building out the teams that they've done that are more agile, and starting to say my agile acquisition pod will be supported by agents. As a marketer, I kind of love this idea. Oh, we have agents. Oh, I've had agencies for a really long time. I know how to deal with agents because I know how to deal with agencies, whether those agencies are agents of AI or agents of people. Those things together will really advance what we're able to do today. So I'll be able to look at acquisition, retention, growth, all of those different things and say, how do I enable those things with a combination of human agents, system agents, and partner agencies to be able to do my business at a way and a scale and an effectiveness and efficiency that wasn't available before. And we're seeing it today. I know a lot of folks say that we're in pilot purgatory, but there are winners out there now, and you're seeing it really make a difference. There'll be breakage along the way, but hey, there was really bad marketing regardless before.
Yeah.
And you had marketing before.
I love your assertion that you're in the waste management business. That is hysterical, actually, like really funny. There's the old advertising adage, right? That 50% of your advertising is waste. You just don't know which half.
Exactly. But this is how a guy like me, who's not a super creative, can get into the business. You got to play with what you got.
Hey, look, playing with what you got is what it's all about. And ultimately, that's the ultimate combination of knowing what your capabilities are and matching them to a goal. I mean, that is a playbook. So where are most brands in your mind going? I mean, especially from your consulting days and in mine as well, where are most brands going wrong when they're trying to modernize their quote unquote, their stack?
Well, I think, are they going wrong? I don't know that they're going wrong. They were going at the rate of the stacks. The speed of the stacks now have shifted and the capabilities have moved. And you can see with the agentification, introduction of AI, and the ability of the agencies, the technology partners, the platforms like us and others to be able to partner with the marketers. I think the dialogue and the playbooks are evolving. Yes, they are broken, but I'm starting to see the shift and starting to see the CMOs saying, I need to be that customer person and delivering customers. What do I need to go do now? And I think they're asking the right questions for the playbooks to be redeveloped.
One of the really hot topics in B2B is the go-to-market, the GTM playbook. How does this apply to that? Because it's a very different thing, right? Like selling cookies is one thing, selling cars is another thing, selling complex software like a Zeta to, multiple buyers, buying committees, large enterprises. How is the agentic thing changed? Because I know I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear you talk about how that playbook evolves.
I'm going to say something that may be heresy. Sales and marketing is one thing. And it's the most evident in B2B that there's the spectrum from the initial introduction of the brand, the concept, whatever, tying something to a need state all the way through to the sales. And just saying that's a conversation that historically has just been delayed over time with technology and the idea of being able to create thought leadership, all the aspects of engagement until final sale. It's a supportive aspect of managing a funnel straight through with full view through. Organizationally, we've separated it out. We've created MQLs. We've created many, many ways to count things. We say that, well, who's going to take credit for this? At the end of the day, is the margin in place at the end that makes sense? And can you look at the straight through and say, I've got my productivity to the way I want it? And that's what I see really happening here. And I see increased visibility across it, the ability to tie that conversation from the initial piece of thought leadership that stimulated somebody to come to your site or whatever, and then every interaction along the way.
I can interpret that in a bunch of different ways, and I fully agree. And I've agreed for years with this, but there's the human side. There's the incentive structure of the salespeople who work in a very different universe than the traditional marketer. Maybe they shouldn't. But do you see, like in the future, is the organizational playbook collapsing those functions, or will they remain separate and just need to figure out how to do the thing together?
So I think if we look at the companies, who are we selling to? And I'll use selling across the middle. And then just the intervention points are different functions will be contributing and touching along that way, or different agents doing that. I think it will come together, but that's going to be the focus on the customer, the prospect to the customer.
Ultimately, the customer, the prospect should know nothing of this. To your point, I'm not sure they do. If I go to a website and I read an article on martech.org and I go, oh, looks like an interesting white paper. I'm experiencing the brand as the brand. I'm not experiencing a marketing touch and then a sales touch. But internally, we have that backwards, right? Oh, that's a marketing touch. We've defined it as such. You don't get credit for that if it closes the sale because they can't measure it. Like,
It's the ultimate broken playbook.
it's like a great name for a podcast. The more you get into this, and again, you could go in a bunch of different directions, but I love the assertion of the first principles of the 3 Rs. There's frameworks here, obviously as a McKinsey, and I think you were even at Arthur Anderson, like as a consultant guy, right? Like, the frameworks are really important, but sometimes practically speaking, frameworks get written off as, well, that's consultant speak or whatever. And I've played the game too. I've been both on the brand side and the consulting side. But I do think that whenever I remember to go back to first principles, good things happen. And when I get caught up in tactics, maybe things don't go as well as I would like.
Well, I think one of the things here, and yes, I was at Arthur Anderson, and before that, I was at IBM. I was on the technology side at IBM, and you raised something I think that's very important here. Don't go build a bridge without a framework. Don't go build a building or something that you want to stand over time without architectural first principles, without something to believe that that's going to stand over time. There's no difference here. If you build something that will stand over time, you can remodel the interior, different playbooks, different things, change the elevators, change the HVAC, but really make sure that the core pieces are in place, that it will be resilient as much as any system can be. And that's important. And that's, to me, the difference between frame and playbook.
It just reminds me of buying a house. We bought a very old house a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah, the truth is like I was going to say, the bones were really good. I needed to put new AC in and I needed to change things, but the location was good. The bones were good. And I think that's, brands are foundational if they're built properly and they're built to last. And yeah, they can go, they can go off track, but you can always come back to those first principles and figure out, oh, this is who we were. This is our reason for existing, and rebuild from there, no matter where you're at.
A brand promise can last 100+ years.
It's amazing when you think about it from that perspective, because in the last, let's say 5 or 6 years, there've been, whether it's the crypto rush, the NFT stuff, like there's been a lot of investment. Money was very cheap. Now we're seeing it in AI, right? There's the explosion of these AI startups. They're not really worried too much about brand. They're focused on functionality. They're focused on probably getting bought and acquired in this gold rush, which is fine. That's the time period we're in. But like any time period, we will see some brands that are built to last. The Googles, probably the OpenAIs, like those kinds of brands will last much, much longer because they stick to those first principles and not rush after the tactics and the things that just bring the cash register today.
They know how to move fast when they need to move fast, and they know how to acquire when they need to acquire.
Before we wrap up, I want to get inside your head. We've mentioned your time at McKinsey, Deloitte, Arthur, IBM, and now Zeta Global, which is an incredible company unto its own right. Let's talk about a time where you personally, or at a company you're at, like really had to force yourself to break through something. Like the playbook had broken, it's broken. You look around the room and go, everyone agrees it's broken. What's that process? How do you change your perspective? What thought process do you go through to force yourself through those times?
Well, Mark, I'm going to give two perspectives on that. If you're a consultant, or even if you're in a company that's going into a new category or moving the market along, you are creating change with your clients and really starting to say, how can I help them get there? Some folks talk about a burning platform or other things. I think it's about how do you create an invitation in somebody's head that pulls them, that interests them, that gets them engaged. And I think whether you're talking about yourself or talking about the client, really being able to create something that has an invitation, that has a little bit of an obsession, that ignites their interest to say, I'm curious. And curiosity is a big thing that, rather than forcing you to, ignites the fire to. It really causes you to want to do that. I've done that with many clients and helped many a client discover that curiosity that will get them to where they need to be. We see that coming now with Zeta Answers, even by naming it answers and giving it that provocative sort of perspective, it gets people curious as to say, what will it really answer? Curious, challenging, and other things. They will want to challenge it. That's great. That creates that energy. I think individually, we've all gone through different career stages. I started at IBM. I never thought I would be in a consulting sort of world. I started as a technologist, worked through that, was a maker of things, and got invited by this place called Arthur Anderson to leave because, like, oh, you know middleware, you know this stuff. You're a human factors guy. We want to talk about experience in this new beastie called the web. You want to come over and talk to us about that? Well, I'm like, I know how to make things. I don't know how to talk to people about those things. But was able to be curious about how can I take this and scale it outside the maker of things, but help other people go make those things. And that curiosity became the factor that pulled me out of where I was at. And it was a pull as opposed to a push. And maybe that's not what you want to cover here, but I think creating a pull, and maybe it's the marketer in me, creating a pull is much, much better than a push.
That is really interesting and a really interesting perspective, which is why I love having this part of the conversation. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. This is like incredible. I mean, we covered a lot. We covered first principles. We covered the 3 R's. We hit silo. You didn't say the word silos, but we talked about organizational silos and breaking and trying to break those down. I think we agree. Playbooks are broken. Not that they're not useful, but they're broken and breaking. I love the assertion on waste management. That's a really interesting frame to think about marketing, not just advertising through, because a lot of what we do is waste, and like knowing the difference between what actually works and not is kind of the whole game in many ways. Talked a lot about agents, which I think we're about to enter kind of the heyday of agents. Incredible conversation. Like I said, thank you so much. Before we go, tell us where people can find you, Zeta. Like, give us the details and where people can find you.
They can find us at zetaglobal.com. And I think you have my email and everything else. So that's how you can reach us.
That's awesome. Congrats on the new gig. You're now on the brand side of the table, so that'll be fun for a while, right?
Absolutely.
I'm excited for you. Thank you for watching Playbook Broken. You can find us on YouTube, martech.org, all the audio channels, basically everywhere and anywhere. If you have thoughts or feedback for me or Ed or the show, please leave a comment. Find me on LinkedIn, and thank you for watching.